What is going on, boys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are breaking down the must-add players that could be sitting on your waiver wire right now. We're covering a wide variety of league sizes, so whether you add a player is going to depend on how many teams are in your league. I made a video about 2 weeks ago talking about the gems that could be sitting on your waiver wire, and a couple of those players are on this list once again, but don't worry, we have a ton of new players that you're going to want to add that could be amazing long-term holds. Without further ado, boys, let's dive right into it. Before we get into the video, I want to give you guys my picks tonight for Drafters Fantasy Sports. Fun fact, the picks that I gave you in my last video, the 4-leg parlay, actually hit, so that was a 10-to-1 parlay. If you tailed it, congratulations, but with Drafters Fantasy Sports, you can do drafts on there, you can do pick'ems for a wide variety of sports. If you guys like gambling, make sure you sign up using referral code FIREDUP, and when depositing a minimum of $20 using promo code FIREDUP, they will match it 100% up to $100. The link is in the description if you're on desktop. It's also available on iOS or Android, so make sure you guys download it, use my promo code, and gamble responsibly. The first player on this list, number 28, yes, you heard that right, we have 28 players on this list that are must add, depends on your league size. It is Michael Rasmussen of the Detroit Red Wings. And I just want to make this clear, this is a deeper league roster and it's going to depend on your settings. The reason why Rasmussen is on this list is, first and foremost, he puts up amazing hits and blocks. Last year in 56 games, he had 119 hits and 48 blocks. That is incredible stuff. So if you're in a bangers league or a league that heavily values hit shots and blocks, you need to add this guy. Another important thing to consider is that he's getting more ice time this season. Last year, he averaged 15 minutes and 5 seconds of ice time per game. This season, he's averaging 16 minutes and 22 seconds. So that is certainly promising, and that's going to mean more fantasy production all around. One last thing to consider is that last season, his point totals were actually pretty decent. He had 10 goals and a total of 29 points in 56 games, and that's an 82 game pace of 42 points. Now, I should mention that Rasmussen's ice time is definitely increased due to the fact that Robbie Fabry is currently out with an injury. He's missed a couple of games, and we just got confirmation today that he is going to be out for a month. Basically, for the next month, Rasmussen is going to see better deployment, which means better fantasy production. But even when Fabry comes back, Rasmussen is still a fantasy asset because of those hits and blocks like I mentioned earlier. Having a guy like Rasmussen who could put up 15 goals, 40 to 50 points, 150 hits, 70 blocks, that is going to be valuable in a lot of leagues, a lot of category leagues as well. So make sure you take a look at this guy because 2% rostered is far too low. The next player I want to talk about is Travis Sanheim. He's only 3% rostered on Yahoo, and the reason he's on this list is because we saw last night against the Oilers that he was on the first line power play and he's getting a ton of ice time every game. He's currently leading all Flyers players in ice time with 25 minutes and 27 seconds of ice time per game. He puts up great peripherals, and we'll see about the deployment on the first line power play. I'm a little bit disappointed in this because I was expecting a Cam York breakout, but we know how Torts is with the veterans. But obviously, if he manages to stay on this first unit, his value is going to go up quite a bit. He already has 3 assists in 4 games, and even if they kind of rotate on the power play, he still plays a lot of minutes and he puts up great peripherals. So make sure you take a look at this guy because his roster percentage is far too low. Next up, we got to talk about rookie Leo Carlsson on the Anaheim Ducks. He just scored his first NHL goal in his NHL debut last night. He was drafted 2nd overall in this year's NHL entry draft, just behind Connor Bedard. And generally, I'm not a fan of rookies in fantasy. However, his deployment in the first game that he played in was very promising. In his NHL debut, he was 2nd in power play time on the Ducks, and he played over 19 minutes that game as well. So if he can continue to get that type of deployment, he could put up a decent amount of fantasy points. The next must-add player is Ryan O'Reilly of the Nashville Predators. And I really wasn't sure how Ryan O'Reilly was going to play going to Nashville. I wasn't sure if he was going to be on the first unit. But if you're looking at his deployment so far in Nashville, it is really promising, and obviously the production has been great as well. Currently, he's averaging almost 20 minutes a night, and he's 3rd on the Preds in power play time. He's playing on the first line with Philip Forsberg. He's playing on the first line power play. So if this continues, I could see him putting up 60+ points. The only issue I have with Ryan O'Reilly is that if you're in a league that heavily values shots, blocks, and hits, Riley is terrible in that department. I wouldn't suggest picking him up in that type of league, but if you're in a league that doesn't value peripherals that much or a straight points league, O'Reilly will have value. The last thing I want to say is obviously he's a pure center. He doesn't have dual eligibility. That is absolutely a downside. Center is such a deep position, so this is definitely a deeper league ad, but if you're in a deeper league and you need a guy to boost your forwards, then O'Reilly could be a good target. The next guy I want to talk about is Ottawa Senators goaltender Anton Forsberg. Now, I was a little bit disappointed by this because I labeled Korpisalo as a must-draft goalie. I drafted a ton of them in my best ball drafts. I just assume that if you're going to give a guy $20 million and a long-term commitment, that you're going to want him to start 70% of the games. However, that has not been the case so far. They're currently splitting the crease. This could obviously change on a dime if one of these goalies go on a hot or a cold streak, but for now, they are splitting it right down the middle. Forsberg has played really well, so unless he starts to play poorly, they are still going to give him starts, which means that he will have value in your leagues. Obviously, this has impacted Korpisalo's value negatively and bumped up Forsberg's value, but it's not like Forsberg is going to have a ton of value starting 50% of the games unless you're in a very deep league where goalies are hard to come by. So if you're in a league with 14 teams or more, then Forsberg should be rostered, but anything lower than that, then I don't know how viable it is. Maybe if you are in a pickle with goalies in a shallow league, then yeah, Forsberg's a good option, but yeah, I mean, I'm just not a big fan of tandem, so we'll see how it plays out. But for now, Forsberg definitely has had his value increased. So like I said, Forsberg is a great add in a deeper league. I still think Korpisalo is going to have more starts than Forsberg this year. Only time will tell. I will say that if Forsberg keeps playing this good, the Sens will have no choice but to give him starts. So yeah, just see how it plays out, guys. It's definitely an interesting development that I don't think a lot of people expected. I'm just catching back-to-back strays here because we got Joseph Woll at number 23. I told you guys that Samsonov was a must-draft goalie, and I still think he is going to get 50-plus starts this season. However, the start of the year hasn't been great for Samsonov. He didn't play terrible against the Panthers, but he's definitely had some rough games with some rough goals let in, meaning that Woll's stock has certainly risen. Woll showed a lot of promise last year, especially in the playoffs when Samsonov went down with an injury. We'll see how it all plays out, but if Samsonov continues to play poorly, then they are going to give Woll starts, and that will give him the opportunity to gain the starter's crease. Definitely add him as an insurance play if you have Samsonov, or if you are in a tough goalie situation, then this could really pay off in the long run. Next up at 22, I want to talk about Artturi Kaliyev of the Los Angeles Kings. I labeled him as a potential breakout back in August, and I really do think he has a lot of potential. Now, I just want to make this clear that this is a speculative ad. I am a little bit concerned about his deployment since coming back from suspension. He's played 2 games and he's only averaged 37 seconds of power play time per game. That's definitely concerning because last year he averaged over 2 minutes. It was like 2 minutes and 7 seconds of power play time per game. So definitely a big decrease. He may just be getting punished for getting suspended, but it is something to keep an eye on. Another concern that I have is his ice time in general. 12 minutes and 59 seconds per game is not going to cut it. But last year it was actually worse at 11 minutes and 40 seconds per game. I feel like they need to give this guy more minutes, and the reason why he's on this list is because Victor Arvidsson is out long-term after having back surgery, so this could be the perfect opportunity for Kaliyev to move into the top 6. Right now, he already has 3 points in 2 games despite this deployment, and it was the same situation last year. Despite only averaging 11 minutes and 40 seconds per game last season, like I told you guys, he still had 13 goals and a total of 28 points in 56 games, so this guy is an offensive beast. He just needs to get more ice time. Kaliyev had the 5th highest power play goals per 60 minutes last season, only behind Leon Draisaitl, Tage Thompson, Timo Meier, and Mika Zibanejad. So I do think that he deserves more power play time. With Arvidsson out, he has the potential to get that time. So again, like I said, more of a speculative ad, but definitely a lot of upside in this firepower Kings offense. At number 21, we have Nikolaj Ehlers of the Winnipeg Jets, and I want to let you guys know that this is more of a short-term ad. The reason he is on this list is because Gabriel Vilardi went down with an MCL sprain. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Very disappointing news, by the way. I was very high on Vilardi going into the season, and he was playing really well at the start of this year. With Vilardi out 4 to 6 weeks, Ehlers is going to see a bump in ice time. It's looking like he is going to be on the first power play unit as well. It's not like his deployment was great the first game with Vilardi out, but still, guys, he will see a bump in his ice time, which means more fantasy production. And the last thing I want to say is that the reason that this is a short-term ad and not a long-term ad is because Rick Bowness obviously has Ehlers in the doghouse. His deployment was terrible with Vilardi in the lineup, getting third-line minutes on the second unit. So once Vilardi comes back, I expect Ehlers to go back into that situation. Maybe that will change. I do think Ehlers is a top 6 forward. Rick Bowness just doesn't see it that way. So yeah, just a short-term ad, gonna have a bump in value with Vilardi out. Next up, we have another Jets player, Alex Iafallo, getting moved from the Kings to the Jets in that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. And basically with Iafallo is he's on the first line power play. That's not something anyone was expecting. I think people thought Ehlers would finally be on that first line power play with Blake Wheeler and Scheifele gone. However, Iafallo is getting significant power play time, which means that his fantasy value has gone way up. Now, the only concern is that he's still playing on the third line, even with Velarde out, so it seems like he is going to get bottom 6 minutes for the rest of the year. He's averaging less than 15 minutes of ice time per game. It's not ideal, but if he manages to stay on that first unit for the rest of the season, he definitely should be higher rostered than his percentage right now. So if you're in a deeper league, definitely take a look at Iafallo. Next up, we have Ryan Johansen of the Colorado Avalanche, and I've talked about this guy in that gem video, so I'll keep this brief, but basically he is on the first line power play right now on the Avalanche. Has a ton of value playing alongside some amazing players, Makar, McKinnon, Rantanen. There is a chance that Johansen gets taken off that first unit. I still think Nichushkin can find himself back on that first unit. But for now, Ryan Johansen has a lot of value. He finally got his first point against the Chicago Blackhawks last night. It was a goal on the power play. I do expect him to put up more points and potentially have some big nights being on this power play. So definitely take a look at him. He only has center eligibility, which isn't ideal, but in a deeper league, he could be a great add. Next up, we have Cam Atkinson of the Philadelphia Flyers. He is only 4% roster on Yahoo. This is far too low in my opinion. He is on the first line power play, getting significant power play time. He is getting good ice time as well in general. He scored 3 goals in 4 games. And we've seen in the past Cam Atkinson have elite goal scoring abilities. He's put up some great numbers. So with him getting this deployment, there is a chance that he has a great year. Last season, Atkinson didn't play a single game. They were pretty much without Couturier for the whole year as well. So we're definitely going to see some improvements with the Flyers. I'm not expecting them to be a playoff team. I know they've started off hot, but they're definitely going to cool down. Either way, guys, we are going to see improvements from the Flyers, especially on the power play as well. Their power play was the worst in the league last season, so this is going to be good for a guy like Atkinson getting this deployment. I'm a little bit disappointed because I think Tippett should be on the first line power play. He's not. Maybe that changes, but I think because Torts and Atkinson have that connection going back to Columbus, that Atkinson's going to stay in the first line power play and the top line. So Atkinson, definitely a very good add. Maybe more in a deeper league, but in any leagues with 14 teams or more, this guy should be rostered. At number 17, we have Nick Paul of the Tampa Bay Lightning. His roster percentage skyrocketed after that big first night that he had. Then he posted 2 duds, but he just had another good night scoring a power play goal. And the reason he's on this list is pretty simple, guys. He's on the first unit, getting significant power play time on one of the best power plays in the league, playing alongside Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, some elite players. So if he continues to stay on this first unit, he will produce. He also puts up great hits and blocks. So if your league values peripherals, he definitely has an edge against his competition. Him being on this first unit is very interesting. He's a big body. They're playing him on the bumper position. We'll see if it sticks. But if we're looking at last season, we saw basically Alex Killorn and Brandon Hagel rotating on that first unit. I think it's going to be a similar situation. You know, Alex Killorn had career years on Tampa playing in this spot. So if Nick Paul is able to utilize this, I think he is going to put up potentially, 20 goals, 50 points with great peripherals. He will have some big nights as well. So I do suggest adding him. However, I will say you should only roster him in leagues with 14 teams or less if your league values hits and blocks. If not, then don't go ahead dropping some established guy for Nick Paul. At number 16, we have Columbus Blue Jackets goaltender Elvis Merzlikins. He has been dealing with an illness, a flu. He was supposed to play tonight, but he didn't, but he's going to be back very soon. There's a couple of reasons why he's on this list, guys. The first reason is that he has played really well in the games that he's played so far. It's a very small sample size, so I wouldn't get excited about it. But the second reason, I think this is the most important reason, is that the Blue Jackets are a much better team than last year. We know Laine missed half of the year. We know Werenski missed almost a full season. They added some guys in free agency. They have Van Tilly. You have Marchenko potentially leveling up. So you do have a better Blue Jackets team, and this is obviously going to help Elvis in fantasy. Now, if you're in a category league, Elvis is not going to be a great option. But if you're in a points league that value saves, Elvis is going to have a ton of value. The Blue Jackets get peppered with shots, so Elvis is going to have those nights where they might lose, but he still puts up, 8 to 10 points. It's going to get the job done. And we know that it's becoming increasingly rare for goalies to get 55 plus starts in the NHL. And it's looking like Elvis is going to be one of those goalies that has that amount of games, because They had backup Spencer Martin. I know he played good against the Flames tonight, but he was terrible last year. He's not going to be stealing starts from Elvis unless Elvis plays like he did last season. I know he was bad last year. I get it, guys, but if he plays like he did 2 years ago on this improved Blue Jackets team, he will have a lot of value in your points league. So make sure you take a look at Elvis if you need a goalie. 36% rostered is far too low in my opinion. So yeah, definitely target him on the wire. Next up, we have Florida Panthers forward Evan Rodrigues. He's a guy that I talked about in my gems video. A lot of these players on this list I identified before the season started in that gem video. And basically what I said in that video, what I'll say again, is that his deployment is great. He's a guy that's getting 19 minutes of ice time per game. He has the 4th most power play time on the Panthers as well. So he's on that first unit with Barkov and Tkachuk. If he continues to play on the first unit, getting this amount of ice time, he is going to be one of the biggest steals on the waiver wire this season. There's always a possibility that Bennett comes back and bumps Rodrigues off of that first unit. But for now, Rodrigues has a lot of value playing on this firepower Florida Panthers offense. He had 4 points in a game a couple of nights ago. So he has the ability to put up these big nights with his deployment. Definitely take a look at Rodrigues, even in a shallow league, if you're in need to boost your forward depth. He's a guy that I think is going to have a lot of value this season. At number 14, we have another Panthers player, defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson, another guy that I identified in my gems video 2 weeks ago. We saw in training camp that he was on the first unit and he was playing great on there. And so far throughout the season, he's been on that first unit, playing pretty well. He has a goal and a total of 2 points in 4 games, but what really stands out to me is his deployment. He's averaging the most ice time on the Panthers. He's averaging the most power play time on the Panthers. This is great news for fantasy. I understand once Montour and Ekblad come back that he is going to get bumped off that first unit, but for now, potentially for the next 2 months, he is going to be on that first unit and have a lot of value. If you are in need for a defenseman, make sure you add Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I think his roster percentage of 16% is far too low for a guy that's going to put up a lot of points in these next 2 months. So make sure you target him. At number 13, we have Boone Jenner of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Basically, this guy is getting first line minutes, top power play minutes, and he puts up amazing shots, blocks, and hits. So he's a guy that has a ton of value, and he has dual eligibility now as well, center and left wing. So this is a guy that should be rostered in any leagues with 10 teams or more. He was amazing last year if we're looking at his point totals, his fantasy points per game. He was really good, and I think he is going to have another good season. Make sure you target this guy on the wire. At number 12, we have Shayne Couturier, another guy I talked about in my gems video. He has played amazing so far for the Flyers, and he's only 17% rostered. I think this percentage is going to go way up very soon, and let me tell you why. The main reason is simple, guys. It's his deployment. He's averaging the most power play time on the Flyers. He's averaging the most ice time among forwards. He has a goal and a total of 4 points in 4 games. He's a +7. He honestly looks amazing out there. Obviously, Couturier has not played a lot of hockey in the last 2 seasons, missing all of last year, only playing 29 games in the 2021-2022 season. But if we're looking at the point totals before that, he's basically been a consistent 70-point player if you're looking at 82-game pace. He has a potential to get back to these numbers, and the Flyers are a better team from last year. So there is a lot of upside from Couturier. I would suggest taking a look at him on the wire if you need to add a player long term. He could really pay off. At number 11, we have Artturi Lehkonen of the Colorado Avalanche. He is one of the biggest sleepers in fantasy hockey because if you're looking at his roster percentage, it's only 36%. This makes no sense, guys. He is a lock on the first line power play on one of the best teams in the NHL. He's getting significant power play time on there. He got significant power play time on there last year. He was great last year. He was on pace for over 60 points last year, guys. He is going to have another great season, and he needs to be higher rostered. It's a no-brainer, guys. He should be rostered in any leagues with 10 teams or more. So if he's sitting on your wire, make sure you pick him up. Next up, we have Brock Boeser of the Vancouver Canucks, and I talked about him in my Week 1 reaction video. He is a guy that I am high on for this season based off the deployment that we're seeing. And it makes sense, right? Bo Horvat is gone, giving Boeser the opportunity to be a staple on that first unit. Surrounded by some great talent, Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson, Andrei Kuzmenko. Boeser is going to put up a lot of points. Another thing that's promising is his even strength deployment as well. His total ice time is great. So if he continues to get this deployment, I'm expecting him to potentially put up 70 plus points, guys. We've seen him put up some great seasons in the past. I know he has the talent, but now that he has better deployment than last season, I really do think that he is going to be very valuable in fantasy. He's absolutely going to cool off because his goal total is not sustainable, but being on that first line power play, getting top 6 minutes, it means that he is going to put up a lot of points in this offense. So make sure you target this guy in the wire if he's still somehow not rostered. At number 9, we have Zach Werenski of the Columbus Blue Jackets, one of my must-draft defensemen for this season, and he's only 51% rostered on Yahoo. This is far too low, guys. I don't understand why this is the case. Maybe some leagues don't have IR spots and they felt like dropping him. We did get confirmation when he got injured that it was only going to be 1 to 2 weeks, so I don't understand why people dropped him, but they did. Either way, guys, if you dropped him and he's sitting on your wire, make sure you pick him back up. He just returned tonight. He scored a goal and put up an assist. He has so much potential, guys. Just look at the last couple of seasons when he was healthy. He has amazing goal scoring capabilities. He takes a lot of shots as well. So if your league values shots, he has a massive edge against his competition. He should be rostered in any leagues with 8 teams or more. At number 8, we have rookie Logan Cooley of the Arizona Coyotes. I've seen a number of Coyotes games this year because I have many Coyotes players on my fantasy teams and my best ball teams. Clayton Keller, Sean Durzi. You guys know this if you've been watching the channel. But what I've seen from Logan Cooley so far is extremely impressive. Not only does he look great out there, but his deployment is very promising. He's averaging 18 minutes and 37 seconds of ice time per game, and he's also on that first unit getting very good power play time. He has 4 points in 4 games, all of them being assists and all of them coming from the power play. 2 of these assists are primary, which is what we want to see as well. Very promising stuff with Cooley. I think this Coyotes power play could be pretty decent this season. Cooley's going to be on it, which means a lot of potential. We'll see how it all plays out, but there's a chance that Cooley puts up 60 plus points this season and maybe even wins a Calder trophy. But Dart Truthers don't want to hear that, but that's for another conversation. We will see what happens, guys. I'm very excited about his deployment. I'm very excited about his production so far. And I think you gotta add him if he's sitting on your wire, especially down the stretch in your fantasy playoffs where Cooley could break out. He could really help your fantasy team. Next up is Nick Schmaltz of the Arizona Coyotes, a player that I told you was a massive sleeper going into this season. He's been on pace for over 70 points in the last 2 years, and it's like nobody cares. I don't understand it, guys. Maybe it's because he's on the Coyotes, but he's playing alongside emerging superstar Clayton Keller. I shouldn't even say emerging at this point because he is a superstar. He is going to be a league winner this year, in my opinion. He's also playing on a power play that I do think is going to improve with Cooley and Durzi getting added to it. So he is going to put up a lot of points. We just need him to stay healthy. I understand he doesn't put up the greatest peripherals. That is a downside if your league heavily values shot sets and blocks. So make sure you check your league settings. But in general, guys, having center and right wing eligibility, having the prior seasons that we've seen him have, his roster percentage at 35% is far too low, so make sure you add this guy immediately. At number 6, we have Shayne Gostisbehere of the Detroit Red Wings, and I understand in most of your leagues he's probably already been added. However, there's some people in here that are in more shallow leagues where he could be sitting on the wire, and I really do think he's going to have a lot of value this season. The reason why Gostisbehere is a must-add player is because he's situated on the first unit on the Red Wings, a team that is on fire right now. Yes, they may cool down. Some of this production is not sustainable, but either way, guys, that first line power play time is so valuable. Because his power play has been so good, I expect him to keep this together, meaning Gostisbehere is going to be great throughout the season, especially if the Red Wings can continue to surprise some people. His ice time in terms of even strength isn't the best. He's the 4th defenseman in ice time on the Red Wings, but still, guys, we've seen in the past him putting up great numbers. He's a great offensive defenseman. Even on the Coyotes for the last 2 years, he was putting up great numbers. So if the Red Wings can have an elite power play, Gostisbehere is going to have so much upside. Next up is Seth Jarvis of the Carolina Hurricanes, a guy that we identified as a must-draft forward, a guy that I told you guys 2 weeks ago before the season started to add because his deployment has been incredible. He's getting almost 20 minutes of ice time per game. He's averaging a lot of power play time, and this is rare for a team like Carolina that runs a very balanced offense. And yes, you could say, okay, Svechnikov comes back, his ice time is going to go down, Jarvis, his production is going to go down, but I think even when Svechnikov comes back, Jarvis is going to stay on that top line and stay on the first line power play unit. He's a guy that I've been talking about since August as a breakout candidate. He's only 21 years old, and he had a sophomore slump last year. I really do think he is going to have a great season. Yes, I do think his ice time is going to go down when Svechnikov comes back because Carolina does run a balanced offense, but he's still going to get more ice time than last season. He's still leveling up from last season. He's a guy that you need to take a look at on the waiver wire if he's still sitting there. We'll see how it plays out, but I am expecting him to continue breaking out for the rest of the year, and I'm really excited about it. At number 4, we have Josh Norris of the Ottawa Senators, and if you saw my week 1 reaction video, I had him as a faller. I told you guys I was extremely skeptical about Josh Norris because of all the setbacks that he's had with his shoulder. However, I was completely wrong because he came back and in his first game, he scored 2 goals. He looked great. His shoulder, it looked like he had no problems whatsoever. Obviously, this is amazing news, guys. He only played 8 games last season, and in the year prior, he had 35 goals in 66 games. So this guy can put the puck in the net. He's playing on one of the best offensive teams in the NHL. The Sens also have one of the best power plays in the league. They were 8th in the league last year. I expect them to be top 5 this season. And Josh Norris right now is playing on that first unit. So it's going to mean a lot of fantasy points playing in this offense with his goal scoring ability. Right now he's on the 3rd line, but they're going to ramp his ice time up as we progress into the season. He's going to be in the top 6, getting top 6 minutes. We know he can put the puck in the net, so as long as his shoulder can stay healthy and there's no other setbacks, I expect him to be extremely valuable this season. And if he's sitting on your waiver wire, I suggest you target him. Next up, we have Luke Hughes of the New Jersey Devils, and I understand that his roster percentage is 75%. He is not going to be available in most of your leagues. However, we saw his roster percentage go down by 10% in the last week, so he could be sitting on your waiver wire right now. Now, I may not have to convince you to add this guy because he just scored tonight against the Islanders, but what I will say is that the Devils are currently splitting their power play units into 2. They're playing them evenly, and they have Luke Hughes paired with Jack on the first unit. His brother Jack Hughes, my number 1 must-draft forward for the season, has looked absolutely incredible so far. He is going to be a league winner, and if they continue to pair Luke with Jack on that power play, Luke is going to feast. Now, what I do want to say is that I think Dougie Hamilton should be on the first unit with Jack Hughes. Dougie Hamilton has an amazing one-timer. He has an amazing shot. He's also playing incredible to start the year, but right now the power play lines are working, so it looks like they're probably going to keep Luke with Jack for the time being. These are subject to change. It's very early on into the season. If the power play stalls, they might switch it up. But for now, Luke has a lot to gain from the way they're running these power play units. So if he is sitting on your waiver wire because someone dropped him, make sure you add him. There's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some duds. But this guy has a ton of upside. And what I will say is that if your league value shots, hits, and blocks heavily, then Luke Hughes might not be the best option. Make sure you check your league settings and understand them completely because you'll have guys like Luke and Quinn Hughes, even though they're putting up a lot of points, they're not actually that good in your league because of that issue with shots, hits, and blocks. Nonetheless, guys, with the way they're running these power play units, Luke Hughes, a lot of upside. If he got dropped in the past week and he's sitting on your wire, I suggest you take a look at him. At number 2, we have my most drafted defenseman this season, Sean Durzi of the Arizona Coyotes. He has looked amazing so far. His deployment has been amazing. And if you've been watching the channel, I've been talking about this guy since August. I told you guys that he was going to quarterback that first line power play, and that power play was going to be decent because they had guys like Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and Barrett Hayden, who were very good in the second half of last year. Adding Durzi to this power play and now adding Cooley, which is a very, very pleasant surprise, it's going to be a very decent power play, and Durzi is going to rack up a lot of points. If we're looking at his point totals last year, he had 9 goals and a total of 38 points in 72 games, despite not being on the first unit and only averaging 19 minutes and 47 seconds of ice time per game. Now in the Coyotes, he's a lock on the first unit, and he's actually averaging the most ice time per game out of any Coyotes player with 23 minutes and 40 seconds. He was on pace for over 10 goals and over 40 points last year with pretty poor deployment, so imagine what he can do averaging almost 3 more minutes of ice time per game and being a lock on that first unit. I am so excited for Sean Durzi this season, guys. He has 2 goals and a total of 3 points in 4 games, 2 power play goals. We'll see how he develops throughout the season. I really do think he is going to put up 55 plus points, 10 plus goals. Right now he's averaging 3 shots per game. Again, very small sample size. Last year he only had 110 shots in 72 games. So I think he can put up 150 shots this year. He also puts up a good amount of blocks, so that's always good. The only downside is that he doesn't put up a lot of hits, guys, but it doesn't matter when he has a potential to put up 60 points. So if he is sitting on your waiver wire, you need to add this guy immediately. The number 1 must-add player on this list is Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators. This was a guy that we identified as a breakout candidate back in August. He was second in my defenseman breakout list, and he has looked absolutely incredible this season. He's been a stud on both ends of the ice, and what's really skyrocketed his value is that he got put on the first power play unit. They took Chabot off that power play. This definitely happened earlier than I expected, but Chabot was really struggling, and I gotta say, Sanderson looked way better on there than Chabot. This Ottawa offense is absolutely stacked, and they're gonna have one of the best power plays in the league, so if Sanderson continues to stay on that first unit, he is going to have so much value. We're talking like Adam Fox value, a guy that can potentially put up 65 plus points. The only downside to Sanderson's game is his peripherals. He doesn't take a lot of shots, hits, or blocks. It's definitely a downside. I understand if you're in a league that values those, he is not going to be as valuable, but in most leagues, he's still going to have a ton of value, guys. His roster percentage has gone way up, but it's still only 66%, so he could be sitting on your wire. He's really only going to be available in leagues with 10 teams or less, so if you're in one of those leagues, I highly suggest you pick him up. Even if you don't need a defenseman, just adding a guy with that potential, you could trade him for something even better, or you can trade one of your other defensemen for something good and replace him with Sanderson. There's just so many things that you can do with adding a guy with this amount of upside. So make sure you target this guy if he's sitting on your wire. I really do think he's in for an amazing season. All right, boys, that's the end of the video. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next one.